June 14, 1944. At 4:20 in the afternoon. In a town near Caen, Normandy, Sergeant Ernst Weber picked up the gun that lay next to its British owner, who was dead. He looked at it with a mix of dislike and interest. The gun seemed like someone built it in a shop that fixed pipes. It was rough, just a metal tube for the barrel, and thin metal for the main part. It had a thin wire shoulder rest that bent to the side. The bullet holder stuck out oddly from the left, not from the bottom like a good gun. It had no wood parts and no shiny coat, just a basic blue color. You could see the welds where pieces joined. It was the ugliest army gun. Weber saw that after 5 years of war, British work was bad. He told his helper, holding up the gun to look at it, "Look at this junk. They give their soldiers old, useless metal. It was put together by people who don't know how." His helper laughed. Grabbing the gun, "Let me see this great example of British building skills." The laughing stopped when the British soldiers attacked back. Just 20 minutes later, Weber's group started fighting in very close fights inside the small town streets. They fought house to house against British foot soldiers who moved very well through broken bricks and old buildings. Then came the sound of 9. The sound of small guns was steady, not the quick, loud noise of German MP40s. His team was saving those bullets instead. It was the slower, more careful shooting from the rough British guns that seemed to be all around. Weber shot his stolen Sten gun by accident when British soldiers rushed into the building he was protecting. The trigger was too easy to pull and the gun shot too soon, but the gun worked. The bullets went in easily and the parts moved without getting stuck, even with all the dirt and trash in the air. He shot all 32 bullets in short, careful shots. The gun stayed steady and easy to handle, even though it looked rough. Then the fight was over and British soldiers left. Weber looked at the Sten gun again. With new eyes. It was still a very ugly gun. It still looked like it was put together from simple pipes. But it worked perfectly when fighting happened, and it was light enough to carry easily, but strong enough to be a good weapon. He had seen German soldiers running out of bullets, saving them for their fancy, carefully made guns. The British seemed to be using guns that were so cheap they could give them out in huge numbers to everyone. And lots of bullets, too. Maybe, Weber said softly. The British knew something about war that we do not. This was the Dunkirk problem Britain decided to make. The Sten gun, because of a terrible military disaster, made it hard for the country to keep fighting the war. The rescue mission from Dunkirk happened in May and June of 1940. It saved about 338,000 British and friendly soldiers from being killed or caught, but they had to leave almost all the British fighting groups' big machines and gear in France. About 7,000 tons of bullets, 90,000 guns, 2,000 large cannons, and hundreds of trucks were left there or broken. The British Army, by June of 1940, only had enough small guns to give gear to maybe 6 groups, not good enough to stop attacks or build up the army groups. The war was going very badly. Germany ruled all of Europe's land. From Norway down to Spain. An attack looked like it would happen soon. Britain needed to give weapons to its army fast, while also getting ready the regular pipeline. The Home Guard. They might fight if German soldiers landed. Making weapons the usual way could not make enough of them fast. Britain's small gun factories were only built for times of peace. They made good guns, but they needed workers who were very skilled, and it took a long time to make each one. Making more guns for the war would take years, and Britain did not have that time. They needed fast machine guns. Was a very strong need. These weapons were needed for fighting up close, and for fighting in cities, for times when long shots were not needed. But many bullets were key. Britain did not have many machine guns ready to use. The Thompson gun made in America was a great weapon, but it cost too much and was hard to make. About $200 each, and it took about 70 hours of expert work to build. Britain could not get as many Thompsons as they needed. The War Office wrote down what the new machine gun needed to be like. It had to be cheap to make, easy enough to make in normal, simple factories, works well in war fights, and Shoots good up close, making it cheap and fast was more important. Then looks, the rules basically told the builders to make a gun that broke. All the old rules of making good guns, they wanted it to work simply. So normal workers could make lots. Simple answer came from Major Reginald Shepard and Harold Turpin. They looked at making the machine gun like an engineer. They cared more about making it fast than making it pretty or fancy. Neither man was a gun maker. Shepard was an army man. Turpin was an engineer. He worked as a designer at the Royal Small Arms Factory in Enfield. But he knew more about making things than about designing the actual guns, because they didn't know the old ways of making guns. This helped them. They didn't have to follow the rules about how army guns should look or how they should be made. They only cared about what the gun needed to do and how to make it fast and cheap. The gun they came up with was new because it was so simple. The barrel was just a steel tube with grooves, but nothing fancy. The main body was pressed from thin metal and welded together. Instead of being carved out of a big block of metal, the bolt was a simple piece of metal. It had a pin to shoot and a part to pull out the shell. The place for the bullets was attached strongly to the side of the gun's body. This made it easier to build. But it looked a little strange. The shoulder rest was a thin metal frame that could fold up next to the gun. This made it smaller when not used. The whole gun had only 47 pieces. Other guns, like the Thompson, had over 100 pieces, or 70 for the German MP. Having 40 fewer parts meant it was built faster and less likely to break. It was easier to fix. They could make the gun using simple tools and basic metal shaping tools found in any good workshop. Pressing and attaching metal was faster and needed workers who didn't need as much training. Instead of cutting and shaping, the plan thought that workers would not be very good at the job and that making the guns would happen in buildings not meant for weapons. The price was amazing. It cost about £2 off money for each gun in 1941. That was only 1/10 the price of a Thompson. The time it took to make them was also great. 5 hours of work for each gun, compared to 70 hours for a Thompson. This meant that just one factory could make Stens so fast that it would take 10 factories making Thompsons. And those Stens would cost only a small part of the Thompson's price. For a country facing a huge life or death problem with not much money, these good things were very important. Testing the first model in 1940 showed a gun that was rough but worked. Hitting things far away was just okay. The short tube and simple aimers made shooting very straight past 50 steps hard. The trigger was known to be very touchy. It could shoot by accident if someone held it without care. The clip on the side made the gun awkward to hold and likely to get stuck on gear. The gun was loud and the barrel jumped up a lot when shooting fast. It did not have any nice parts that guns made when there was peace would have had. But it worked. The gun shot every time. Using normal 9mm bullets that England could make or take from German supplies. The simple way it worked was always dependable. Few parts broke or stopped working. The open bolt stopped early firing from hot barrels. This was a big problem for guns with closed bolts when shooting a lot. Taking it apart needed no tools and could be done in seconds. Soldiers could keep the gun working with little practice. Broken guns could be fixed by anyone who knew how to work with metal. Making the guns grew very fast. They made about 100,000 guns when they first started in 1941. By 1942, they made over 500,000 every year. The most guns were made in 1943. Made more than 1 million guns, with many different kinds being made at the same time for different people to use. The total number made during the war was over 4 million, making the Sten one of the most produced small machine guns ever. This was done while Britain was also making rifles, machine guns, big cannons, and tanks, planes, and many other war things. This showed how fast they could make weapons. Saving money was very important. For a million Stens at £2 each cost about £8 million in total. This was less than Britain spent on many single big warships or programs to build new airplanes. With that small amount of money, Britain gave guns to its soldiers with small guns that gave them a big shooting advantage in city and tight space fights. The money math worked out was super good, making it possible to have guns that cost less than the older, normal guns. The truth was, British soldiers' initial reaction to the Sten was mostly bad. They saw the rough gun as proof that Britain's military standards were falling, and they were desperate. Soldiers who were used to the Enfield rifles, which looked nice and were well made, despite their age, found the Sten's rough look upsetting. The gun looked cheap because it was cheap. It had stamped metal and visible welds, looked like it was quickly made by bad workers. The weird clip spot and thin frame looked like mistakes instead of good plans. Soldiers called it the stench gun, plumber's nightmare, and other mean names. This showed they thought the gun looked bad and was not good, but fighting in wars slowly changed how they felt. In North Africa, where dirt stopped better guns, the Sten kept working. Its simple parts and loose fit, which looked like bad making, actually made it strong when things were tough for British soldiers. Soldiers fighting in hills found the Sten gun was light, which made it easy to carry on long missions. The heavier Thompson had a harder design, but the Sten needed less fixing while they were fighting. The gun worked well in small, tight fighting areas. This was clear during city fights in Italy. Stens cleared buildings fast. It shot many bullets quickly in places where shooting perfectly from far away did not matter. The 9mm bullet was good enough for close fights, and it did not kick back as much. This made the gun easy to hold when shooting many times. British troops learned Tau's Stens when they gave them a good help, but used rifles for shooting far or straight by 1944. British soldiers who knew how to fight mostly liked the Sten as a helpful tool, even though it had problems. Leaders who first hated carrying the ugly-looking gun now saw it helped in close fights. Sergeants who complained it was not fancy saw that it always worked even when things broke. Better guns. The gun was still ugly, and it was still hard to hold and use right, but it worked for what it was meant to do, and working well was what mattered most. Than looking nice or small safety problems. The German puzzle. German soldiers first hated the Sten gun, but their feelings changed. They slowly started to like it, and then they began to use the guns they took from the enemy. At first, they just laughed at the Sten. German soldiers who grabbed Stens or looked at them on dead British men thought the rough way it was built showed Britain was getting weaker. Pictures used to spread lies showed German soldiers holding the captured Stens to prove Britain was desperate. Secret reports later said the guns had been made roughly, but at first, the Germans said they were worse than their own guns. Fighting changed their minds. German soldiers who used the captured Sten guns found out they worked well and were easy to shoot, even though they looked ugly. The 9mm bullets were the same as the German MP40 guns used. This made the Stens helpful right away, since they didn't need different bullets. The gun's simple design made it easy to fix with just a few tools. German troops started holding on to the captured Sten's extra guns, especially when they needed a gun they could throw away or when their normal guns were missing. By the year 1943, German armies were using the captured Stens all the time, especially on the Eastern Front, where they lost a lot of gear. And getting new things was hard. Some German soldiers liked Stens better than their own MP40 guns. They found British guns worked well even in bad weather. They were better than the fancy German guns. This choice was surprising because German soldiers usually did not want to use guns they took from others. This was because bullets were hard to get and fixing the guns was tough. The fact that German soldiers used Stens even with these problems showed they really liked the gun's useful features. German reports from the year 1944 said the Sten worked well, but they also said it looked cheaply made. Experts saw that Britain had made the gun very quickly and easily because it worked well. Not just looked good, that gun's simple plan made it work better than fancy guns that were harder to make. Some papers said to change German machine guns a little bit or use the Sten's easy ideas. But those ideas were never used because Germany couldn't build things anymore. The biggest praise from Germany was copying the Sten's plan. The German Gert Potsdam, made late in the war, was a rough copy of the Sten. It was for local soldiers and fighters, but the gun was never made in large amounts because Germany fell apart completely. But making it showed that German weapon experts thought the Sten gun was good enough to copy its design when they needed simple, cheap guns that could be made fast. The D-Day fight in Normandy showed how good the Sten was. It proved the Sten was useful in the exact fighting places it was made for, fighting close up in cities and towns, where shooting many bullets mattered more than shooting far or straight. Found Stens were best for fighting close up, where people shot from just a few feet away, not from far away. The gun was really good for fighting when people were very close. This was just what the land and the fighting in Normandy needed. When the British Army Stens and the local fighters Stens came together, it made a problem where the German soldiers who were taking over the land were shot at by fast guns from both the main army and the secret fighters. The secret fighters stood up to help the Allied armies land. They attacked German food routes and ways they talked, using guns that the British had been giving them for years. The way the main army worked together with the secret fighters, who all had the same simple guns, was important. Made one big team that made it hard for Germany to fight back. German soldiers fought people using guns they thought were just cheap junk. British foot soldiers cleaned out towns using Stens to stop the enemy as they walked through broken buildings. Freedom fighters attacked German backup soldiers going toward the landing beach using Stens for quick attacks that slowed down the German soldiers. The plain British gun that German news had made fun of was working very, very well in those places where its good parts were better than its bad parts. Reports after the fight agreed the Sten gun worked well in Normandy battles. British reports said so. Say the gun worked well and was good for fighting up closer. Man reports said British small teams fought very wealthy, used the small machine guns a lot. This gun that no one thought was very good when they practiced proved to be perfect for the hard fighting in cities and close areas. The Sten gun's biggest help was how it was given out to many Pieplito groups fighting back across all of Europe, making fighters that kept German soldiers busy and helped the Allies. Britain's spy group knew the Sten was the best gun for the fighters. Its simple design meant that the fighters people could use and fix it with just a little practice because it was cheap to make. Britain could give out many guns. It was very strong and worked even when people did not take care of it well. This meant it kept working even if soldiers did not clean it often. Starting in 1942, these Stens were dropped from planes to secret groups across Europe. These were the main guns for hidden fighters. So many were given out, the French fighters got more than 100,000 Stens before D-Day. The Polish army got many thousands. Groups in Norway, Denmark, Belgium, and the Netherlands all got them to large amounts. Even fighter groups in Yugoslavia and Greece get Stens from British help. The gun became a sign that Britain was helping groups fighting back. It was a useful tool that gave guns to secret fighters all over Europe. The Sten gave these fighters the power they really needed. Its fast shooting was helpful when they attacked by surprise. Lots of bullets made up for the fighters' small amount of practice. Its small size meant they could hide it and carry it easier than big rifles. Its small bullets 9mm could be taken from German soldiers or made secretly in hidden shops using things they already had. The groups fighting back learned how Stens well in quick attacks, killing people, and secret damage that bothered German soldiers. The Germans felt worried when many Stens were given to the fighters. They were getting very scared. The soldiers faced enemies who had new, fast-shooting guns. This made things unsafe and needed many soldiers to guard the area. Every German soldier guarding train tracks or phone lines was a soldier not fighting on the Eastern Front or stopping the Allies. The big plan of giving cheap British guns to the fighters was that it made Germany have to send hundreds of thousands of soldiers there. For soldiers guarding places who were badly needed somewhere else, the final count showed for million Sten guns made from 1941 to 1945. Cost £8 million of British money spent. This gave guns to British and friendly armies during the war and to secret groups fighting in Europe taken by the enemy. That money bought the ability to make guns that Britain needed very badly at that time. The old ways of buying army supply scowled not give them enough guns. The weapons were not perfect, but they didn't need to be. They just needed to work well enough. When fighting, they had to be made fast using things they had. They had to be cheap. So Britain could make many of them while also making all the other things the big war needed. The Sten gun did all this. The cost in lives from the Sten Sprobles is unknown. Some British soldiers died because they had Stens instead of guns that were better. Some died when the gun fired by accident from trigger stat were too easy to pull. Some lost fights because the Sten short distance and bad aim made them useless in fights. These bad things really happened, but we cannot count them exactly. The good things for people are hard to know, but they were big British soldiers who would not have had these guns without the Sten being cheap to Macahead guns that helped them win fights when they were close up. Resistance fighters would have had no guns if Britain didn't give out so many Stenskit guns that let them fight the armies that took over their country's fights that might have been lost because they didn't have enough uns for close fighting were won because British armies had lots of Stens. The big plan liked the Sten even though it had problems. Britain needed a certain kind of help and needed it right away, using only a little bit of stuff. Old ways of buying things could not do that job well enough. The Sten gun could do it. It worked well, not because it was built perfectly, but because it fixed a certain hard problem with certain limits. That useful success happened because they agreed to use a simple rough fix when that rough fix was all the stuff and time allowed. This was a lesson bigger than just this one gun. It taught bigger rules about how countries with factories fight a total war well.